Hello. What a cognitive capacity in this room. Are you aware that if you would unite, you would completely change the world? I mean, completely. I love Margaret Mead's saying, which says, never underestimate the ability of a handful of people to change the world, because the only thing that ever did was a handful of determined, devoted people.
Do you need the mic?
I don't think so. There is one very important thing that you have to understand about this talk. They don't pay me. So you will have to pay me. And you have to listen very carefully, because I will give this talk only once, because at the end you will understand how you have to pay for this talk. I always tell my students, whenever you browse for information on the internet, or you sit down with a book, or you sit down at a lecture, you should first of all try to figure out who this information, knowledge, or whatever comes from. Who is this person? What are this person's competencies? What is their intention, context? Why are actually they giving you this information right now? Well, this is the excuse for me to talk about myself. I consider myself to be hardcore engineer. I always loved, and I still do, building things, devices, electronics, mechanical, even carpentry, just building things. Since I started working, now almost 40 years ago, I'm developing something, even today. At one point of my life, completely unexpectedly, I was a politician. When I saw how crazy I am, that on the first day of war, I said we need internet. And that was in a moment when there was no internet in Europe, and so many people in Croatia did hear for the word internet, they could say it. They invited me to become Deputy Minister of Science, in charge for IT for the whole Croatia, and I learned quite a lot doing this. And for the past 30 years, I teach. And this was also accidental. I didn't ever think that I will be a teacher. It just struck me. It happened to me, and I started loving it. Because for me, it's extreme satisfaction seeing the aha effect in your eyes. I didn't get rich doing all these things financially. I'm well off. But I became very rich using each and every opportunity to learn. I might say that I'm a learning addict. If there's an opportunity to learn something, I want to do it, regardless what it is. And I had the opportunity to learn from really, really experienced people throughout the world about many different things. I established CARNET, Croatian Academic and Research Network. I created the whole department for information technology in the Ministry of Science from 0 to 25 people. I've also founded the Laboratory for Systems and Signals. I still lead at my faculty, and we do all the wonderful things that we do. And I also created a lifelong learning education academy, which is actually providing soft skill knowledge in a slightly different way than they taught me. So I'm an engineer, technologist. And then all of a sudden, education struck on me, and I teach many different things, many different courses. I created 10 courses in my life, and this is something that I taught or am teaching right now. From computer forensics, that's probably somewhere here, to communication skills, to our 650 freshmen in my school. But people and people's minds were always fascinating to me, and since I was a kid, I tried to figure out how and why people think. And it actually is following me, and when I started doing tools for education and learning how to teach better, I started studying learning theories. And actually, as far as I know, the only comprehensive portal on learning theories is the one that I created with my colleague, Jure Petrovic. And then, as I was doing big national, international, domestic, small, different social, technical projects, I started learning all those soft skills and started teaching them and studying them, and have my personal views how things should be done in projects, changes, conflicts, etc. Presentations. For instance, when I teach people how to present, I spend half day convincing them not to do a presentation. and teaching them how to replace it with something else, in order for us about the lunchtime to figure out why is it that we want to present. What is the only thing we can do with standing physically in front of you? And last, because it came last in my life, I dance. All crazy dances, usually not associated with males, and I also teach them and find a lot of fun in it. Actually, just last week, I was invited by a professor at our Faculty of Physical Education to give a lecture to 200 students of the third year about why an engineer wants to dance a ballet. Because their male students need to learn how to teach rhythmical gymnastics. And many of them believe they will lose their manhood or masculinity if they make a sensual movement. And we made a little study, and I will present it in a Brain, Body, Movement and Cognition conference in Sorbonne at the end of this summer. And I will do a workshop on sensual movements for men. In early 60s, my father was part of the group who invented, they didn't invent, but they designed, at that time, Yugoslav electroencephalograph, EEG machine. And it was one of the best in the world for many years. And my first company I started working for was doing EEGs because I always wanted to do what my father did, because he was speaking in humans' brains. Hospitals didn't have money, company broke, so I had to move to another job. But I'm very, very happy because I had my father and I had this peek into this world, and I'm extremely privileged person because I have two daughters, wonderful daughters. One of them is electronic engineer who is now doing her PhD in Switzerland in neuroscience. She's playing with brain. And another one, she's a psychologist. So I always have at my hand very nice, dear, smart people to talk about my very unusual ideas, like the one I want to present today. In the past half a century or so, we have witnessed tremendous advancement in engineering. We engineers created ways to listen to the signals in human body, to lurk into the structure of the body without cutting it, to analyze energy flows within the body, to go into much detail and a general look at a human being. We were able even to intervene with the processes in human body and human being. And due to this advancement in engineering, the life science people, the medical people, were able to make tremendous advancement in understanding human body and human brain. So you are welcome to tell us thank you. We are now able to do wonderful things. When we talk about brain being a mouse or a human, we can now know everything about the wiring. Billions and billions of neurons in our brains or brains of a mouse are being scanned. People cut brains into 1 cube millimeter cubes, slice them in nanometer slices, and then they analyze, they scan each and every neuron and synapse, those sub-millimeter size to neurons 1 meter long. So we will be able tomorrow, literally, to know each and every connection, each and every wire in our brains, where it goes from, what is connected to what, every synapse. Unimaginable. Then energy. We are able to see how oxygen, how glucose, how other agents and chemicals act, react, exchange within each and every cell of our brain. And we can monitor this in real time. When we are solving a mathematical equation, or when we are analyzing emotion or experiencing something, we can see it happening. We can see how the sugar flows, how the oxygen flows or doesn't, and where it happens. And what is the difference between healthy and unhealthy brain, male and female brain, old and young. We can see this, and we can correlate it with wires and other things. Signaling. Now people have used genes from jellyfish and put it into cells of a brain in order to make it to glow, to fluorescent. So they can see what's going on. They can differentiate between thousands of different types of neurons. Even more, they've been able to manipulate genetics of brain cells so they can control it with light. With blue light, you excite a neuron to fire electricity, send impulses without being excited from something else. With red light, you can inhibit from transmitting even if he is excited, it is excited. So we can control signaling, we can turn on and off various modules or individual neurons in brain. And finally, we can figure out which parts of brain do what, the modules, and how they interact. So one would say, thank you engineers, because now we know everything about the brain. Now we'll be able to understand how this brain works. Yes and no. There's a beautiful German word, jein. Jein, yes and no. Because, what do you think? Can we use all this wonderful and similar technology that we will develop undoubtedly in the few years that come, or decades that come, to observe consciousness, to discover abstract thinking, to explain, to understand, to model, to simulate metacognition, creativity, ethics, moral dilemmas, moral reasoning, emotions? Do you think that we can really build a device that will detect emotion? Where is it? Detect that it's happening, explain it? Or know how to send a pink light into brain and stimulate creativity? You don't have a solution, but here I have a magic pink light, look at it, and now you are creative. Or, by the way, some of you maybe have seen the videos of it's a Parkinson's people. Some of them react, they put them glasses with a blue color or green, whatever, and they stop shaking. They stop shaking. They even show them the paper with specific color and they stop shaking. Beautiful things to research. But can we really use observation? Can we really use these instruments to understand how mind works? Because the mind is not synonymous with the brain. Mind and brain, as you know, is not the same. Do we have instruments to analyze the mind? How do we store concepts? Where is the idea and images of a butterfly or different butterflies stored in my brain? Can we find the butterfly in my brain, all a rose? Or something less tacit like rainbow? Or something very abstract like love? Is there a microscope? Is there EEG? Is there CT scan? Is there some device that will yet to invent that will pinpoint and say, oh, there is a butterfly? What if we don't have a butterfly in our brains? What if we have some strange mixture of experiences stored somewhere? So depending from where the light comes or electrical impulses, in one moment this combination will present the idea of a butterfly, in another moment the idea of a rose, like those shadow sculptures, if you've seen ever in life. When you look at them, they look like nothing, but Light from the specific angle will present you a specific idea, concept, picture, image. Maybe the thing in our brains is nothing like we have ever met. Because I believe that human mind is constructed using abstracts and layers which we don't know and which cannot be observed. And we engineers cannot build a machine to show them. We need something else. Trying to convince you in this, or at least raise your doubt that I might be right, let me try to walk you through the complexity of something so much simpler than a human brain that I'm very unhappy when somebody calls it electronic brain, namely the computer. Let's assume that I find a working computer from like 30 years ago. Why the old one? Because they are big and you can access everything. They're not very compact. You can easily come to wires, components, so something that's easy to analyze, like a brain of a mice, for example. And I give this person, a very good electronic engineer, I give him tools to measure voltage levels and energy, signals, dissipation of energy, and all sorts of stuff. Oscilloscopes, multimeters, data logic analyzers, infrared cameras. I give him everything we have. The only thing I don't give this very good electronic engineer is the knowledge how computer works. He has never seen a computer, he doesn't understand, he never heard how computer is constructed. Now, what this person or a group of people or the whole civilization of such people can figure out about computers? Well, they can quickly figure out that the motherboard is the brain. And they can also figure out the wiring. With a lot of painstaking work, they can figure out every wire where it goes, from to what it connects. Wiring, they can figure out. They can also figure out the energy. Oh, they will realize, oh, it seems that the whole thing is about voltage, not the current. And the voltage, oh, look, this device has only 2 levels of voltage. And maybe they will be able to come up with this crazy abstract idea of binary numbers, zeros and ones. Because you cannot see zeros and ones in computer, you can't. They're just a concept. You can see voltage, low and high. And it even changes, it's not always the same low and the same high. You have to say, well, probably voltages between this and that, we can call them zeros, and with those between this and that, we can call them ones. But you can't observe this. You have to get this crazy idea to introduce the binary system to analyze computers. Well, then you can monitor these levels, changes on the wires, and start understanding some signals. So you will figure out that some wires are addresses, some other wires are data, and then even you might be so lucky to come up with the idea of commands and data, and start analyzing commands, and you can even figure out programming constructs and languages. Of course, you will quickly understand what each part of the brain does, where the information is stored, where the communication happens with the outside world, where the processing happens, where the energy comes from. You will realize the modules of this electronic brain. But then somebody will ask you, okay, you brilliant engineer, can you explain, for instance, folders and files? Can you see them with your microscope, with your oscilloscope, with your CT or whatever miracle device you have? Can you show me the file in this computer? Please show me the file. Or, you know, these memory sticks that you carry in your pockets? Well, show me the file. Where is the butterfly? Please show me the place. Or how the computer becomes conscious. When you boot computer, when you turn off the energy, it processes, it goes through the process, it says, I'm booting, and all of a sudden it's aware. It can do things. Can you explain how this conscious becomes? Or something very complex. I'm watching a video in a window on a computer. Can you explain this Windows stuff? Can you use this marvelous engineering artifacts to show me the things, to explain them? Well, let me explain you how these things really are. When you take your memory stick, which is plugged into a computer, so I cannot pop it out, the memory stick, if you would analyze it with the devices that we have, is just a sequence of memory locations. Actually, sequence of devices, small devices, sub-micron devices, which can store 0 or 1. It can have a charge or not. If it has a charge, it's 1. If it doesn't, it's 0. And they are physically, you can observe this, grouped in 8s. So group of 8 these devices, you can physically see that it's a group. And we call this group byte. But then these groups just go on. And today you can have this device which has 1,000 billion or million bytes, a terabyte. So I cannot show it as a long line on this screen, so I've made it as a two-dimensional array, but they are actually just a line, one after another. And for the sake of this talk, we will consider this one square to be a bunch of these bytes, something we called in computer science a block. But mind you, you cannot see the block. Block doesn't exist. It is not a physical thing. Some programmer somewhere once decided that he will use this device so that he will always use a block of 512 bytes. Yet another programmer said, no, I will work with 2048 bytes. And then later somebody said, no, I'll use 4096. It's arbitrary decision. It could have been 13 or 5432. Somebody decided it. It's not written anywhere. It doesn't exist physically. It's a concept. It's an idea of a block. Okay, so where is the butterfly on your memory stick? Well, it is here, in those green blocks, spread all around. It's not in one place. It's in many places, depending how big your file is. So how does a computer know where is it? Because on another device, when you store the same thing on please, could you copy me the picture? Well, it will be in some other places. And on another device in some other places. It's changing. Even on one device, it is changing. Okay, so who says where is the file? How the computer knows when you say, why don't you show me the picture of the butterfly? How does the computer know where is it? Well, because there is another place. It's a special block, which says which blocks contain the butterfly. But if the file is big, then you can't store all the locations, all the links. So therefore, you have a location of a block which has location of blocks. And if it's even bigger, then you have a location of a location of a location. It goes 4 times deep. In one abstract idea how this could be organized, and there are many. How do you know which block is the first one to look at? Well, because there is another special block where there is a text that says, my file is called butterfly.jpg, and please go to this block to see where actually the data are. Well, this is in one instance. And then all of a sudden you copy something, and all these old things are here, and now your butterfly is somewhere else, and everything is different, and the blue and the red and the green ones are different. Mind you, they are all physically the same. They physically don't differ. You can't say, oh, this is the blue block, this is the red block, this is the green block. You can't say this. You can't observe this. They're all the same. And they change. They float around. And even more more. When you copy a file, the old ones where the butterfly was still contain the butterfly and the links to butterfly. They're still there. They're still there. The only thing that's not there, in this blue one, the old blue one, there is a one number changed which actually deletes the link. And you no longer know where to go to look. But you still can see it. And there are programs that can... Have you ever erased a file and then asked somebody to help you unerase it? You did? Well, that's how it happens, because it's there. It didn't go away. It is still in the brain. And then you create another file. Something, a rose, for example. And the rose is blue and red and green, and it needs more space, and for some reason it will reuse, it will reuse the green one that previously belonged to the butterfly, but it will not reuse the other butterfly segments. And nothing is observable. There is no device that can detect it, because it's abstract, it is a concept. And somebody has to tell you the secret of the abstract concept on something we call file system. Files and folders are just an abstraction, a concept, an idea, without any physical component. And actually this concept is the same regardless you use the memory stick, the hard disk, the DVD, or any memory device. The concept is the same. The implementation is quite different. Actually, on the same medium, hard disk, memory stick, you can have, these are these concepts. One is called FAT, File Allocation Table 16, another is called File Allocation Table 32, then NTFS, which you use on your PCs with Windows. If you have Linux, you use X2, X3, or X4. These are all abstract concepts, how we organize things in the memory of a computer, permanent memory. They're different. You can know everything about FAT16 if it's formatted in X2. You don't know it. You can't read it. You don't understand it at all. And any one of you can invent today yet another one, and nobody will be able to retrieve any data from it because you don't know the concept. And there is no device you can use to analyze and say, oh, now I know the concept. You don't. Even on the same media, on the same physical thing, you can separate it in 2, 3 parts. Have a disk C with one concept, disk D with another one, and disk E with yet another one on the same thing. And then you say, oh, I don't want it, you reformat. And reformatting is absolutely doing nothing. It's doing nothing. Somewhere is putting some labels so that when you say, when your computer says, I think this device is formatted in X3, and goes on a specific place on the medium and says, is there this number? It is. Oh, it is really formatted. If it's not, it says, no, unknown format. So formatting does nothing. It just says, yeah, I agree that in the future it will be in this language, that concept. How a computer becomes conscious? Well, thank you for asking. The computer, when it wakes up, it has a very small permanent memory, but it's a very, very brief program which says, go to the main disk, however you find what main disk is, and read the first block. Again, a concept. Somebody could have said, read the second block, the last block, the middle block. Somebody said the first. Okay. And there are many reasons to read, for instance, on hard disk, to read the middle block. Because when the head hits to move, it is the quickest to move from the central position. So it would be more efficient to use the central block. But somebody said, no, go to the first one. Somebody was lazy, working late night. And then it says, okay, and from the next block, read where to read the next program. It reads this block, loads the program, executes the program, which says, and there is also information, what is the next block? And then what is the next block? And then where are the blocks of something we call operating system? It's a 4-stage process. Again, arbitrarily, except for the first block, and most computers today use the first block. Interestingly, a little standardization, but everything else is different. Changes from a computer to computer, from a system to the system. Again, if somebody doesn't tell you, there's no way for you to figure it out. And then finally, let's talk about graphical windows. Magic thing, Windows. There is an interesting story who invented it and who stole it from inventors, but for another lecture. For instance, we would say, okay, why don't you tell me, where is the cursor? The cursor, where is it? Because the graphical memory is, again, a series of memory locations, nothing else. What you see on the screen is just light representation of a memory. Each byte in memory corresponds to one pixel, one dot on your screen. And accidentally on the screen it is in rectangular format, but in the memory it's not, it's a linear. So again, after how many memory locations I have to present it in a new line, it's again agreement, a concept, an idea. So where is the pointer? Well, the cursor, the pointer is here. Until you move it, then it's there. And then it's there. And then you have the scroll bar. You have to scroll, right? And when you want to find the scroll bar, well, it is here. And then it moves all the time. It's not there. At least with the file, it's always in the same place until you copy it or erase it. Well, with graphical things, no, they continuously move. You can't catch it. It's moving very quickly. If you are watching the video or a video game, then even if you don't do anything, they move. Everything moves. And trying to catch this, you need to work in microsecond area and try to figure out what's going on. Why is it moving? Why is it changing? So to find any construct in graphical memory is impossible without understanding the abstract concepts and the modularity. Because in computers, what people invented in this brain that I refuse to call the brain, the components are read-only memory, random access memory, working memory, external memories like DVD, disk, or flash RAM, your memory stick, and a graphical processor unit with its memory. These are components. These are modules that we can see. They are perceivable. They can be detected, they can be recorded, they can be scanned, they can be touched with very tiny devices. This is something we can analyze. But then, in order to have a file system, we have an for instance, booting. For booting, we have abstract that uses these components. For graphics, we have abstract that use these components. For video, yet another one, and for file system, another concept. And then they come in layers. People decided that in computer we have hardware and the rest. From the rest, we have drivers. Drivers are small pieces of software which are the only ones allowed to touch the hardware, to turn a wire on or off, to send the light or not send the light, to read the keyboard or not to read the keyboard. The only piece of software, very small, they're called drivers. And those drivers can be accessed only and exclusively by operating system, which is yet another software. Nobody else, none of your applications, nothing that you run on your mobile phone or a computer is allowed to touch hardware. Cannot. There are physical, electronic mechanisms that prevent this. They can only talk, your applications can only talk to operating system, which then talks to drivers, which then drive the electronics. And then there are user interfaces. So we have at least, how many? 5. At least 5 layers. Some do have physical mechanisms preventing or allowing access. Others don't. Others are, again, just a convention. So, in this very simple device we call computer, we cannot figure out anything about it relying on physical observations. we have to figure out how to figure out abstract constructs, ideas, concepts that are used to give us all this. Booting up file systems, video on the screen, and many other wonderful things. Machine learning, big data, all these wonderful things the computer do are based on this. Therefore, by mere physical observation of components, of interaction, of processes, we cannot actually figure out these things. We can't. And this is why I believe that maybe we will never be able to understand how the mind works. Because to understand moral reasoning, creativity, emotions, abstract thinking, numbers, how people work with numbers, we need to know something else, what architects of human brain, or any brain. If you look at a bird that builds a nest, there is a lot of mind. Is a dog conscious being? Is a human being who suffers from dementia conscious? So to understand these things, we need something else. And I'm not sure that we are able. Maybe those jokers who said if the brain was simple enough that we can understand it, we were stupid enough not to understand it. Maybe we will never be able to understand the mind, because we have to figure out these very abstract concepts and layers, who knows how many of them that are used to create the mind on top of the brain. But I'm an engineer, I never give up. Never give up. So is there any hope? I don't want to leave you desperate without any hope. Is there any hope? Well, definitely, and it's laconic, we need multidisciplinary research. Everything that belongs to life sciences, psychology, technology, math, and who knows what else. Probably every human activity, art is required. We need all people, all sorts of people from all walks of life and professional work to think together, to use that mind to try to figure out how the mind works. I'm definitely certain that there is no one profession that can figure that out. Maybe one crazy person, but not one profession. You know, if you would go like 100 years, 200 years in the past and bring the brightest people of that time, the brightest scientists, and you give them a television or a radio or a mobile phone, any kind of communication device, or remote control for your car or garage or air condition, and ask them to explain you how it works, they will not be able. Why? Because in their knowledge space, one thing is missing, and this is electromagnetism and electromagnetic waves. Without electromagnetic waves, you cannot explain television. You can't. You can talk about vibrations of the wind or goodwill or whatever, but you can't explain it. Something is missing in your knowledge space. We cannot explain human mind because something important is missing in our knowledge space. There is a missing piece. And we need to try to find it. And I believe this can be done only with wild research. Very crazy things, very unprovable things, things that you cannot apply for in European projects. Actually, I tried to apply for a project that will tackle this problem. And you're nice people, I can share my secret idea with you, because anyway, I couldn't apply it because the line of financing was called FET, Future and Emerging Technologies, and its subtitle says projects that cannot be commercialized in the next 5, 10, 20 years. But then you have to prove that, you have to give so many proofs that it's already almost commercial. So some administrators didn't quite understand the creativity. My idea was the following. Let's take hackers, those bad hackers, those guys who break into computers, Let's take the best ones in the world and separate them into groups. And let's invent a new type of software, completely something crazy, and give one group the assignment to create this software in secrecy, somewhere hidden in some basement. The other group is supposed to understand how this works. And psychologists, cognitive scientists of all sorts, life sciences, technologists, everybody, voodoo masters will observe those who are trying to break. Maybe some of these hackers have some crazy method to figure it out. And maybe this crazy method can be used to hack the human mind. I couldn't apply it. So we need crazy, crazy ideas, crazy things, crazy people, and people that we will never think that can work on detecting how human mind works. We need them all to work together. We really need wild research, including hackers. So here comes the moment when you have to pay. You have to come up with a crazy idea. If I don't receive in the next 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, any crazy idea from you, this lecture was nothing. Worthless, and you don't have to pay. If it has any value, I will receive so many ideas that I won't be able to read them. Nothing is crazy enough. Nothing. Because the problem is so big that improving the candle, we cannot invent the light bulb. We need very crazy ideas. And yes, there is 99.99% probability it will fail. So what? It's fun researching, isn't it? Thank you.